yesterday, one of these things was not like the other because it was a bunch of brains in me. Today, it's brains and muscles and me. So I'm just saying, like, it's a continuous thing. Like, you guys can have a seat. Now, I just wanted to point out, like, there's one obvious difference here. All right, so I would like for, we're going to start at the end with Thomas. He's just going to do a brief introduction, tell a little bit about himself, his fitness stuff, and then we're going to get down to the end of the row, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So, Thomas?
All right, my name is Thomas DeLauer. A lot of you probably just heard me speak, so you probably know a little bit about me. As far as fitness background goes, my story is all about my 100-pound transformation. So I was about a 280-pound healthcare exec in that world, and lost a bunch of weight, was always into fitness before, but of course, kind of lost sight of that. It was essentially a bulk gone wrong, to be completely honest, that just turned me into 280 pounds and super overweight. So abbreviating this all very quickly, part of my goal when I lost a lot of weight was, okay, say, how lean can I get, and can I ultimately get some magazine covers? So 16 months later, after setting that goal, boom, landed my first magazine cover, and that's ultimately how the brand started. If it wasn't for leading those magazine covers, then I don't think I would have ever gotten the initial following that allowed me to be heard and be able to talk about the stuff that I talk about now. So that's why I'm here talking about fitness.
Thank you.
Robert Sikes, lifetime natural competitive bodybuilder. I've kind of run the gamut doing bodybuilding, the bro dieting approach that just didn't work, left me unhealthy. I've seen a bunch of competitors just totally wreck their health, and I realized there's got to be a better way, so I started doing the ketogenic diet and was able to implement that into my competition prep. Saw great success with it, and I've been just trying to showcase that as an alternative to other methods out there ever since.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristin Rowell, and I will be on the main stage tomorrow, being able to share with you a little bit more about me, but I'll give you the short version. Up until 3 weeks ago, I was a trial lawyer for 17 years. So before anyone stands up and gets out, because I know everyone hates lawyers, I no longer do that work. And I've also run 24 marathons, and I am a natural professional bodybuilder. So I'm going to talk about how I've accomplished those things during my talk tomorrow. But really the way I found keto is in December of 2013, I fell on ice and I broke my right leg in 10 places. Yeah. I had 22 pieces of metal put in my leg the following week, and I actually had the metal all taken out a year later, but I have these really impressive scars. If you get close, you can see them. I used the ketogenic diet to heal from that injury because I started to research a lot about the anti-inflammatory benefits of the ketogenic diet, and I was very surprised after I started it that I started to perform better as a lawyer, that I started to run faster marathons, and that I then became a professional bodybuilder. So I'll share a little bit more about that tomorrow, but I'm really excited to answer your questions today. It is a myth that you cannot build muscle on keto.
Thank you.
My name's Danny Vega. I'm a lifelong athlete. I have a background in strength and conditioning, so I've always been interested in this stuff. In 2016, I discovered the ketogenic diet, and ever since then, I've been really trying to explore all the performance benefits of keto and, of course, carnivore. I did a podcast with this guy over here. You might know about it. And yeah, I'm super pumped to talk about building muscle on keto because we know that it's possible. Now let's talk about how to do it. That's what we're here to do today.
This one works. Hey guys, my name is William Shewfelt. My health journey really started when I was about 12 years old. Just got really, really obsessed with performance, especially around karate. I was doing karate a lot as a kid, so I wanted to figure out how to get in the best shape possible. And I was rail thin. Some of you are thinking nothing has changed, but, well. So as that progressed, 15 years old, I started to get really, really severe acne, doing a more or less standard American diet. And I started to pursue a whole foods plant-based diet at the beginning of college, seeking remission of that. That went on for about 4 years. My health got progressively worse despite all of the different iterations of that I tried. So it was actually, I was one season into filming something and my health was pretty much at its worst, where I decided to give keto a shot. That was about 3 years ago. For the past 2 years, I've been extremely passionate about the carnivore diet. That's really been what's given me the most remission of symptoms, but also the best body comp results, the best energy throughout the day, the most simplicity in terms of diet, and just an intuitive approach to nailing all of my goals. somewhere along that journey, I was an actor and I played a Power Ranger at some point. Studied economics in college, and I've done a couple different things. So that's me.
Thank you.
Unlike everybody else here, I am not a lifelong athlete. I would not have even considered competing NPC until
What's your
I
name?
went keto.
your name?
Renita Mairs is my name, sorry. And I searched out Robert, and he coached me on my first competition and kind of fell in love with it from there. So just recently competed again in May and enjoy it.
And how did you do?
I got first in Masters and first in Novice Masters and fourth in Open.
She's completely like underselling everything. She's a total badass. Can everyone just give a round of applause for the crew here? Okay, so now it's time for questions. So let's go ahead and cue it up. You'll notice I didn't give an intro because it's for athletes. And then there's me. Ran to the mic, very good.
I ran to the mic. Yep. It's a fitness segment. All right, hello. I'm Captain Stephanie Lincoln, Fire Team Whiskey, and actually my question's not about fitness. It's about mindset when it comes to your fitness goals. So that's the number one thing as a fitness coach that I struggle with our clients is to get them into the right mindset to be able to stick to a program and to commit to it as a lifestyle. We'll talk about that with keto. But I just wanted to maybe get someone on the panel's takes or a few of you guys about the mindset shift that you had to make in order to further your fitness goals.
I'd like Renita to start with that just because she classifies herself as not a lifelong athlete. So there was a definite attempt at mind shift. So let's talk about that first.
For me, it was initially finding keto evangelists that, because I'd been keto, but it was sort of every weekend I was off plan, and every holiday, and every evening, and pretty soon I was eating off plan all the time. So it was a recommitment and finding support and knowledge. And the mindset part of it is huge. For me, it is staying positive. So if the scale goes up, I think it's muscle. If the scale goes down, I think it's body fat. So it's like I keep it positive because as long as you keep going, that's really all that matters. So don't give up. Most people are giving up really early. So.
Anyone else?
I want to take a little stab at this. I think that discipline and execution of a plan are pretty much the foundation of your entire fitness journey. So I think a lot of the time, especially in our space where a lot of us have found keto or carnivore or whatever you happen to be doing through frustration over the years, we get really bogged down with searching for perfection, with meticulous tracking that might not even be in service of our goals. And we really go far down the rabbit hole when originally we had one goal in mind and we kind of lose ourselves with that. So the main thing, I think, is once you find a plan, once you create a plan of action, stick to it regardless. If you find something better, 2 weeks into your 6-week plan, stick to your 6-week plan. Simply developing the skill of discipline and execution and consistency, I think will serve you far better than hopping on every perfect diet you find. So that's something that I've learned over time that I've had to really be hard with myself about implementing. And I think also rolling with the punches, because nobody's perfect. You'll have your cheat days. You'll have times that you mess up. Not downing on yourself too much about that stuff.
Do you guys mind if I take a swing at some of this? Okay, so from a coaching perspective, the answer that I'm going to give you is you've always got to go back to your clients with the why that they gave you, right? So why they're doing it has got to be constantly front of mind for them. Because if you're always answering that question of why, it keeps that discipline. The reason that they go off track is because they lose sight of the why. They become unmoored and they're not anchored down anymore.
I'll just say one thing. If you're not eating the right way and if you're not living a lifestyle that's going to be conducive of having a brain that can respond correctly to things, that's the first thing you need to do. So, of course, once you got that taken care of, I think that the second most important thing when it comes to mindset is you really have to forget about the outcome. Once you got that plan set up, you need to focus on the process. Exactly what Will said, exactly what Robert talked about in his presentation. Fall in love with the process And even if you have a goal with a date attached to it, just make sure that you're not focused too much on that and focus on the process. That's what I think.
Yeah, when you love the process, you can do anything.
I actually thought this was a trick question for me because I'm wearing a tank top that's a spiritual gangster. So,
Well, I kind of was thinking that you would answer first.
so I'm not going to repeat what other people have said, but one of the things that I do with coaching is in terms of reminding people of the why, and also just reminding people, you guys, our most important investment that we will ever make in our lives is in ourselves. It is. And we're the only ones who can do it. So I try to remind my clients when I'm coaching them, you are the only one who can execute on this plan every single day. If you have to check in with me and tell me you did it every day to hold yourself accountable, or if I need to check in with you to hold you accountable, I will do that. But it's coming back to that why and coming back to sticking to a plan, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, but sticking to a plan and having it be a defined enough period of time so then you can measure your success at the end. Energy gives you momentum to be successful again. So I encourage my clients, I said, look, I just want you to trust me this one time for this one experiment. We're going to see how it goes. And when they're successful, they have the energy and the momentum to do it again. They start believing in themselves the way I do. And that's really what I think people need the motivation to hear.
Anybody got anything to add?
Thank you.
One small thing.
Okay.
That's perspective. You know, like if you don't have perspective, you have no idea what your body's capable of. The more hard things you do, the better you get at doing hard things. When I do a competition prep, I literally put The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday on repeat in my earbuds because it gives me perspective on what hard stuff really is in life. And it makes that thing that you're doing that may seem hard in the moment seem pretty minuscule. And it makes it that much easier to push through. If you're doing something with a bigger purpose, more people in mind, it makes it that much easier to keep on pushing.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. So I was told yesterday a couple of things. One, I gesticulate, so I'm apologizing to Renita now, like I'm swinging in front of her face if I accidentally do it. And also, nobody wants to hear me, so I apologize. So sometimes I talk. Yes, next question.
Ooh, I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous, we love you.
So I recently was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease.
You're good, man. You're good. You got it.
I know I need to do keto, and I've been doing it a couple of months, but I also work out in a CrossFit gym, and I'm trying to figure out what the high intensity workout and how to incorporate workout and keto.
So is your question how to develop a high intensity workout while staying keto?
Right.
Okay. Who wants to take a swing at that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, yeah, as you know, and I started to allude to this at the end of my talk, when you first go keto, you sacrifice a little bit of that anaerobic. And the hard part with CrossFit, as you know, is you're swimming in that gray area between like, aerobic and anaerobic, and you're switching back and forth a whole lot. And it can be really tough on keto. And, I experience that when I do any kind of HIIT training. To some degree, and I mean, Danny, you might agree with this because we kind of talked about it a little bit, but you can have a small amount of carb backloading that can still allow you to stay well within the realms of the ketogenic diet, little bits of fructose, little bits of glucose in combination post-workout that can give you just enough of that glycogen restoration that you need to get that little bit of an extra edge while not really knocking you out of keto. And that's kind of the stuff that I play around with. But honestly, if your protein needs are met and you do have a good degree of gluconeogenesis occurring, you're going to end up with a good amount of the glycogen that you need anyway. Because on the keto diet, excess protein is going to get converted into glycogen. It does get converted into glucose and is largely stored as glycogen, specifically on a keto diet, which means that the carbs that get created go in your muscles and is what's going to give you fuel for your CrossFit. So my ultimate suggestion with that is, whereas most people are doing their typical WOD, I would highly recommend, until you are fat adapted, be okay with doing a half WOD. Like literally just cut it down, the volume exactly in half, simply because the efficiency of your body utilizing glucose is just not going to be as strong on keto until you're more fat adapted and your body can switch back and forth. So, if you have to do, as many reps as possible for 10 minutes, be okay with doing it for 5 minutes. First of all, you've got a pretty serious diagnosis you're dealing with. You're starting a new diet. You're starting this stuff. So it's kind of that element of compromise that you have to be okay with. It's something that I've had to accept too, is that I'm not always going to be able to train at the same intensity, and that's okay. That's totally okay. Does that help? Yeah.
So I just want to, yes, I'm talking. That's normal. You should not be able to train at the same intensity every single time. If you're redlining it every single time, you're going to break down, period. And there's no discussion about that. You have to have low days, and you have to have super high intense days. And you got to be able to match those super high intense days with equal number of lower days. We're guys, right? So we're like, yeah, if I'm not redlining it, something's wrong. No. You got to give yourself room for that. You got to give your body a break. So high intensity means high intensity. If you go 4 minutes in a Tabata protocol, that's 4 minutes. I guarantee you every single person in here would be dead going 95% of max for 4 minutes straight. It's just not going to happen, right? So it doesn't have to be like super long duration. Just whatever, when you're being intense, be as intense as you can. I tell people all the time, sometimes a C is as good as you can get, right, when you're in school. But if a C is your max, then you did your best, period. So don't sweat that. You did your best. Now come back the next day. You're good.
Intensity is a relative term.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like you're just, even if you didn't sleep well, if you didn't sleep well, your average heart rate will go up 10 beats per minute. So on a day you're sleep deprived, your perception of intensity is totally different. So it's just be okay with that.
Anybody else got anything to add? Danny?
So with CrossFit, one of my biggest problems is that gym owners feel pressured to crush the people that go there because that's what people expect. They look at the CrossFit Games. So most important thing to me, I think you mentioned it, is not be intense too much. And I would say keep those real tough Metcons to like twice a week, especially while you're getting fat adapted. Work on the strength stuff that we talked about. Make sure that you're resting, getting adequate rest when you're building the strength stuff. And then, if you do want to compete, because I know that's a big thing in CrossFit and you feel good, on those long days, if you're going to do EVA, that's a, 45, 50-minute workout, then maybe it does, help if you want to do some pre-workout carbs. But that's something that everybody has to try out. Everybody has to understand their metabolic background, the amount of muscle they carry, and their activity level.
Anybody else?
Can I just...
CrossFit,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, CrossFit for me is more close-knit community and being able to work out with friends. So I don't want to compete. I just want to lose and be healthy with my kidneys.
Good. You know your goals.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Just the idea of prioritizing your goals with your current diagnosis. I can't really say anything about that, but it seems to me that focusing on keto and focusing on nailing your diet would be your number one priority. It's one of those things like, well, thanks. It's kind of like live to fight another day, So you don't want to just start going super hard on CrossFit if it causes you to compromise how effectively you can execute on your diet. If you are super fatigued because you've hardly got any glycogen in you and you're going really hard with CrossFit, like the number one priority is your long-term health. That's what matters. So moderate your CrossFit around that, and that's going to take a little bit of finessing, a little bit of, just seeing how you're feeling. I think what Thomas is saying and what Danny is saying is completely spot on. Ease up a little bit on that, really hard anaerobic, glycolytic, just burning through a bunch of glycogen type exercise. You can obviously stay active every single day. You can go for tons of walks. You can go on hikes. You can ride your bike. Doing these easy aerobic things, you can stay active every day, but the really hardcore stuff, definitely moderate.
Renita, you got anything?
I can add one more quick thing because I think it's going to answer a lot of questions that people have. On a keto diet, you will be a lot more capable of training within that 1 to 3 rep range because that utilizes that creatine phosphate system. So just keep that in mind, that 1 to 3 rep range, the really heavy stuff, not saying you should go out and get injured, but that could help you out a lot because that isn't going to be necessarily dependent on glycogen levels. That's more dependent on the magical fairy dust of creatine phosphate in our body. So even on keto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hi, for you in the vest, great show, just have to say. Thomas, inspired by your speech, and I had this random question. I don't know if anyone else is thinking this here, but I just turned 40. My whole family runs into menopause early, and I'm like, I don't want that to happen. Do you think, or have you read anything about a ketogenic lifestyle being able to kind of stave off menopause because of the control that you have?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the research there is so embryonic, honestly. It really is. Like even to pull data like I pulled, it was trying to extrapolate little bits of little pieces from research that I could. There is a lot of evidence that shows that inflammation in general can lead to an early menopause. And that largely can be dependent upon many genetic factors. So if in your family you have some kind of genetic predisposition to various forms of inflammation or underlying autoimmune conditions that you may not know about. That's the crazy thing about autoimmune conditions too, is that it might manifest through Hashimoto, it might manifest through lupus, right? But you might have hundreds of other autoimmune conditions going on. So my point in saying that is you may have some hereditary autoimmune conditions that are going on that are causing that to happen. So it all comes down to kind of that foundational inflammation where it's like if you can be on a ketogenic diet early enough in life to potentially stave off that and lessen the impact of the immune system on your own body, then you very well could be helping that situation out and delaying it where it needs to be delayed to. But even that is somewhat of a stretch, and I don't want to, speak out of term when the research really isn't there yet.
So there are two people on the panel who may have some more information about this. I'm not going to suggest which two, but...
So my grandma had hypothyroid. My mom has Hashimoto's. One of my two sisters has Graves. And my other sister and I, who practice a low-carb ketogenic diet, don't have any thyroid problems. I am not saying that it's a cure-all, but actually my mother went through menopause pretty early, so it's something that I've done a little bit of research on. And I haven't found anything definitive, but I can say that I certainly don't think it's going to hurt. So I practice it. I actually do some carb cycling just because I found out for me, for a proper hormone balance, I need to. And so I've just been experimenting with that. But so I think that, my view on it is it can't hurt.
Renita?
Pre-keto, I was experiencing some perimenopause in my late 30s, and I saw great improvement just with reducing sugar, grains, and soy. So I'm now 45, and I haven't experienced those things since. For me, I think about the fat as the hormone part of it, so I feel like I eat a tremendous amount of fat, so...
it's true, I've seen pictures.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm a dancer for the University of Minnesota.
Go Golden Gophers.
Yeah, go Gophs. Yeah, for sure. So when we're training during the year, it can be up to 8 hours a day of just like hardcore rehearsal and also just class. And one of the things I struggle with is trying to find time to eat and not binge eat when I come home because I'm so hungry. So I don't know if you have any tips or suggestions on how you space out your meals or how are you trying to fuel your high performance days, especially during those performances.
Can I ask for you to give us a little bit more information just about the timing of your workouts during the day? How many hours and how often? Like what times are you doing it?
Yeah, so on a heavy day, it would start around 8:25 in the morning. So ballet and then probably jazz after. We go until noon, have a break for maybe an hour, and then in the afternoon I have rehearsal probably starting around 2 to possibly 10 p.m.
Okay. So I'll take this just listening to your day. I do all of my workouts in the morning and I do them fasted. I really like fasted cardio and I really like fasted lifting. I intermittent fast most days, but when I do a hard lift in the morning or a hard workout, the first thing I do after, contrary to what many people may think, is I do a really heavy duty protein shake. So if I was in your shoes, I know that midday I would do like a major protein shake and a fat bomb nut butter, like an F-bomb or something, that would keep me calorically getting something in my system. And I do things like that when I have to be going. I do coconut butter for another snack that'll keep me going. My fastest marathon, I had nothing but 1 packet of coconut butter. And I'm still convinced that that's really what we need for fuel. So if you have some experience being fat adapted,
Yes.
I think that those protein shakes and nut butters for me are kind of my go-tos.
Can I ask you a question? Do you track your workouts, what you eat, and how you feel?
I have done that before, but I have found since I'm so type A, it'll be like too much and then throw my adrenals into something that I don't want.
So that's a problem.
Yeah.
Then. I mean, that's a problem in a lot of areas. But if you don't write it down, what you need to do is keep at least mental track of, I ate this yesterday. My workouts were on par, above par, subpar, whatever. Like, it was good, and I felt okay the next day, or I felt okay the second workout, or I felt okay. But if you start noticing after a trend, and what Kristin's saying is, don't just do it one day. Make it a plan. Like, for the next 2 weeks, this is what I'm going to eat based upon my schedule. Keep it consistent, and then if you notice at the end of those 2 weeks you're starting to drag, you need to make an adjustment to that to increase probably the amount of energy you're ingesting.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Just real quick, so in the morning, it seems like with the ballet and jazz, it would make sense that you could probably do it fasted. Maura would probably disagree with all the ballet torture that she went through, but perfectly fine doing it fasted. A lot of people do well. If you feel like Maura feels when she's gonna do a morning workout, not having anything in her stomach, some eggs, and then like a nice fatty meal for lunch, something that's easily digested, and just go the rest of the day. It doesn't seem like it's something where you're gonna need this overly large amount of fuel other than fat and some protein.
Yeah, I mean, remember, you've got a fuel tank, a diesel tank on you. We all do, right? So use that more than anything else. Does anyone else have anything else to add? Okay.
So there's 2 big pieces on the other side, like between what you're talking about during the day. Endurance athletes for a long time have been using protein loading the day before long endurance activities. So I think that's something, start backing it up a little bit more and thinking about what you're doing the night before. No matter what your stance is on how much meat you want to eat or anything like that, eating a larger amount of protein, as long as you're cool with digesting it and it doesn't mess you up digestively, the night prior does actually tend to not only give you a little bit more sustainability, but you give it time for, again, that gluconeogenesis pathway to provide what is demand driven throughout the day. So you'll find yourself much less hungry throughout the course of the day. The other thing is, kind of the elephant in the room is, just control what you eat before you would potentially binge. So kind of like what one of my keto commandments is always be prepared. Have that shake in the car, and that is your default. So if you go fasted the whole day, when you get in that car, you're just like a machine with that one meal. And that way you've broken your fast strategically, and you won't binge because you've got the digestive juices flowing, you're satisfied, you're satiated, and then you can be in the right mental element to make a good decision with what you eat.
Just really quick to echo what Thomas said about the night before. The night before my fastest marathon, while everyone else was eating pasta, I ate steak. And it sticks with you. So that's a really good point.
Perfect.
So I just have one request. Can we see your best jazz hands? Nice. Well done. Next question, please.
Hi there, my name is Susan, and I've been a competitive bodybuilder for about 30 years. And thank you, love it. I haven't competed in about 10 years. About 4 years ago, I found keto and fell in love. However, I just was hitting the wall more and more, where I'd have some of those days where it was just total low energy. And Thomas is my man, and his jam is, and put in some carbs if you need them. So I started putting in the 20 grams of fructose and 30 grams of glucose right afterwards with my protein shake. And lo and behold, that felt really good. I do it on a fasted, I work out about 11 or 12 on a fasted system, and then I have that right afterwards. So my question is this something that I should follow for the rest of my life? Or should I try and wean off of that, get away from my hits somewhat, and get back to just straight keto? Or what's your suggestion?
So
please?
I'd like Renita to take a swing at this first, and then Thomas, you want to address? She did call you out, so you need to account for that. So Renita.
Well, I'm just straight keto. I've never done anything differently. I definitely have an addictive part of my eating, and so an increase in carbs is just going to rise my hunger and my cravings back up. So I stay away from it because it's a slippery slope for me. So
Yeah, echoing that, because it is a slippery slope. So, you just got to exercise a lot of control there, which clearly it sounds like you do. And it depends on so many different levels. So what she is referring to, for those of you that didn't catch it, she has a specific amount of fructose and a specific amount of glucose post-workout. And the reason is that because you have different glucose transporters, GLUT1, S-GLUT1, sodium, it's a sodium-gated channel. So basically it allows glucose to be delivered to the cell, and then GLUT5 allows fructose to be delivered to the cell, mainly in the liver, but still, it allows the absorption of carbohydrates much faster, potentially making it so that you could have a little bit of carbohydrates without jeopardizing your ketogenic state to a degree that depends wildly on how much muscle you have, your genetics, and so many other things. Me personally, I'll have like 7 grams of fructose and like 10 grams of glucose 2 days per week after my toughest workouts. Doesn't kick me out of keto, but it feels like it does refill me a little bit more. So do you need to continue to do that for the rest of your life, was what you were asking me. I mean, that's a little bit of a relative question, because if you feel really good with it, if it's working for you, then by all means, don't change anything. But you can also allow it to be a shock to your system now and then if you want to just back off of it. And if you're doing it in a fasted state, like if you're fasted and then you're working out and then you're breaking your fast with that, I mean, it might kick you out of keto for a small amount of time, but you're going to be right back in, especially if you're fasted, you're keto, and then you're fasted. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But I do think that by making a shift to occasionally taking 4 or 6 weeks without doing that at all, and allowing your body to still develop the systems and processes to recover without the carbohydrates, just because you don't want to run the risk of your body just getting used to that, because it will start developing. You're super insulin sensitive at that point, right? So you also run a higher risk of making yourself insulin resistant, or not insulin resistant to the full degree, but desensitizing that effect. And I want you to be able to use that as a tool in your toolbox for when you need it the most, like your full body days where you would like glycogen deplete and then reload so that the body just takes that. Does that make sense? So like
I feel sometimes like I'm cheating on keto.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
There's another point of consideration, and I also want Will to chime in too, but you also aren't necessarily, you may be masking a need for electrolytes by hiding it behind a hyper amount of carbohydrates, right? Like you're feeling better, but you still may be needing electrolytes, but the carbohydrates makes you feel so good that you don't need to worry about the electrolytes. You know what I'm saying? So adjusting your electrolytes, your salt intake can allow you to wean off the sheer amount, even if it is a small amount. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and the sodium, S-GLUT1 is a sodium glucose transporter 1, so that gated channel can only open up with sodium anyway. Like you've probably so. If you have a little bit of fructose and a little bit of glucose, the fructose can get into the cell without any sodium. I mean, you're going to have sodium in your system, but the sodium-gated channel, it really works best by having a little bit of sodium anyway. So you add the sodium in there, then the glucose can actually hop on board the S-GLUT1. GLUT4 receptor out of the cell can come to the surface, take it in, can do its trick. So sodium should be there either way.
Will?
The one thing I'm thinking about is what is more important to you, whether it's the workouts, how much does that add to your quality of life, versus keto and the diet. So when you mention you feel like you're cheating on keto, the first thing that pops into my head is like, it's not an ideology. None of us care if you're having the shake or not. So if it's making you feel better, perfect. That's fantastic. Especially if you don't want to change the frequency or intensity of your workouts. The one thing for me is I realize I don't want to change the frequency or intensity of my workouts. That's just kind of a constant in my life. So I would rather adjust my diet around that. So if having these shakes allows you to continue doing that, which is giving you a better quality of life, you're more active daily, you're kind of checking that box off every day, I would say continue with it. Like I honestly don't think that that's going to move the needle hugely. You know, that tiny little shake that you have after a super glycogen depleting workout is going to do not much damage at all, I don't think. That's just my 2 cents.
Great. One more thing to add on that. I noticed that a lot of people that are, hitting a wall with long-term keto, they'll often see a benefit with doing like a fat load. Like a lot of people do a carb load. Like you could do a fat load, increase your calories, increase your protein, your fat by like 30%, and also increase your sodium by a little bit. I do that like the night before a competition, and that kind of gives my metabolism a bump. It gives everything a bump, and then I'm able to, train harder the next day. Also, you might want to schedule in a deload week every 6 weeks or so. Give your muscles time to recover. That's going to kind of help prevent any, wall that you're going to hit in the future.
Danny?
Just real quick, I look at carbohydrates like a supplement, If you're doing an activity, and we've talked about this for years, the FASTER study talks about how, fat-adapted athletes can use fat at a much higher intensity, a much higher percentage of their VO2 max. If you start to stay at that intensity, let's say above 75% of your VO2 max, and you're doing repeated efforts and they're short rest, then if you want to continue to do that, fat will probably not be able to keep up. You don't have to do carbs, but if you're going to do that workout, and I've been doing that workout lately, that type of workout two times a week, and I've incorporated a carb day. That takes me through to the next day when I do it also, and it's been working great. And one more thing that I've been using is Superstarch pre-workout, and I've actually seen not only that I've had more energy, but my ketones are trending upward, which could be possibly, short-chain fatty acid production. So it actually is not impacting ketosis in any way. If anything, it's helping it. So.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hey guys, I just want to know your go-to meal. I'm super busy, I travel a lot, and I'd love to know, if you just need to eat a really good...
So go-to quick meal?
Yep.
All right, let's start at the end. Let's see if we can do this rapid fire. Thomas?
So I'd say for meal prep sake and things like that, I'm always a fan of making cauliflower crust pizza is awesome, right? Because you can make a bunch of it and make it taste good, and then when you put it in the refrigerator, it's good to go. So you can make a couple of them, you can trickle it out throughout the rest of the week. It's easy to measure, easy to map it out. So utilizing cauliflower foods, or one of the other ones that is utilizing more of a cheese base, or one that has a plant-based option too, so that you can get more from the almond base. But then you can actually just lay out all of your macros, if you're counting macros, into a pizza relatively easily. So in my opinion, and then, I don't know, make a sandwich out of it, whatever, and then put it in the fridge, and you just have it set. So when I'm on the run or I don't have a lot of time throughout the week, that really is like a go-to for me, because I just make a macro pizza kind of thing.
Robert?
So I'm a huge fan of U.S. Wellness Meats has this 75-25 ground beef, and I'll get a bunch of that. I'll buy it in bulk. You can get a discount, and then you just pre-cook a bunch of that and put it in Tupperware. You have that. It's got a good fat to protein ratio. And there's something out there I saw at a booth. It's called a Keto Brick, I think. I may be a little bit biased, but I like those.
I've heard of it.
Mine is actually similar to Robert's. My go-to is 5 ounces grass-fed ground beef, 1 cup of spinach, and a half of an avocado, sometimes a whole avocado if I'm hungrier. But I cook 2 pounds of ground beef on the weekends or weekday whenever I can do it, and then I portion that out, and I have red meat almost every single day, and it's really easy. The avocado almost makes it like a paste. So I literally heat up the 5 ounces of ground beef and a cup of spinach in the microwave because I like my vegetables cooked when I eat them, and then I add the avocado, and it's awesome.
Organ meat burgers, bunch of liver, bunch of ground beef, some bacon, grind it up, make it into burgers. You got food for several days, and I do it every week.
For me, red meat is about 80% of my diet, so every day it's eating as much steak as I can cram into my mouth. And then around that, I will cycle in liver, I'll do pasture-raised eggs, I'll do whatever other organ meats I can come up with. Seafood, I like to do oysters, some salmon, sardines. But the majority of it is just steak, and it's usually New York strip.
Scrambled eggs is kind of something I use all the time. It's really easy to get your fat grams in because I use heavy whipping cream and cook it in a bunch of butter, and it soaks it all up, and I can hit my calorie level that I want to hit.
So also, if you have a Costco membership, they sell boiled eggs. You can get a couple of packages of those, and there's like 24 in one, and they sell pre-cooked bacon. So if you really want to be on the go, open a Ziploc bag, throw 3 or 4 packages of boiled eggs. They come in 2s, some strips of bacon. Perfect every time. And if you're really on the go, hit a fast food restaurant and ask for like 10 beef patties. Just I want a tray with beef on it, nothing else. They will look at you and blink a few times, but just gently guide them and they'll understand. Next question, please.
Hey, I've been on keto for about a year and a half now. I've lost 140 pounds. And the thing is, I've never really been into fitness. I haven't exercised regularly. Now that I've lost the weight, I feel like I can do exercise, but I'm wondering like what exercises I should focus on for like improving heart health and for building muscle tone.
I'm going to answer for everyone up here. You're going to lift heavy. That's your primary. You're going to do light intensity aerobics, like going for a walk for 45 minutes or an hour. And you're going to do hits. High intensity workouts that are Tabata protocol is what I prefer. That's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 8 rounds. So that's 4 minutes total. That is it. That is all you need. But what is the number one thing? Everyone, what is the number one thing? Lift heavy.
Lift heavy.
And heavy's relative, but that's the number one thing. You want heart health? Lift heavy. You want skeletal muscle health? Lift heavy. You want to improve your marriage? Lift heavy. Am I wrong?
That literally was my answer, and I was just going to say there's actually a ton of research coming out about how important strength training is for cardiovascular fitness. People think you have to run or you have to do all this cardio to have cardiovascular fitness, and quite the opposite is true. Strength training has an immense cardiovascular benefit, so I always tell everyone who will listen to me, if there is one exercise you can do per week, it is to lift heavy shit.
Okay, so go ahead, yes. But along those lines, favorite heavy lift exercise? Go.
Weighted hip thrusts.
Weighted hip thrusts, go. What is yours?
I would say trap bar deadlift.
Okay.
Regular old deadlift for me.
Leg press in the machine.
Deep squats, you got to drop that booty low, though, right?
Hex bar, trap bar all the way, for sure.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, my name's Cynthia. I've done keto 6-7-ish years. And something that I initially really loved, and especially when I was getting into, is that I felt like I could truly trust my hunger to be a good thermometer. But now that I've done it a while, I feel like I'm so easily satiated. I might go a really long time without eating, and then I kind of sometimes even just completely lose my appetite. How do you know when you should maybe be ramping up your caloric intake, or like ignoring the fact that you have no hunger and just go ahead and eat?
All right, let me ask you a couple of clarifying questions for the panel. So that, now, are you competing in anything?
I have in the past, and that's actually when I first started realizing that maybe my hunger wasn't the best thermometer, because the trainer I was using, he gave me my workouts, and I told him I was going to do keto, and all he altered was my caloric intake. And so for the last month, I was eating 900 calories a day, which I felt great. I felt energetic and my brain worked, but I also knew on a certain level, I'm like, that was probably too little for doing a couple hours of cardio a day, lifting 6 days a week with HIIT workouts, but I still felt good. And that's when I realized, I'm like, I think that my body's just gotten maybe great at this, and I've just lost my hunger, and maybe that's no longer a good indicator of how much I should be eating.
Yeah, so I'll just, again, I'll the experts will weigh in. I'll give you the idiot's opinion.
Yeah.
Right? So if your body is telling you, I don't need food right now, you do not need food right now, right? Your body's going to tell you when you need to eat. You're going to know it. So thinking something's wrong, I'm not hungry, is only wrong if you know you've got a competition that you've got to build for, that you've got to kind of overcome some of those natural impulses because you know what's coming up.
Yeah.
Right, but if it's not if it's a situation where it's just you're doing it for overall fitness, just listen to those signals, and I'll let the experts weigh in now.
I'll say something real quick because it reminded me of something Ali Miller's been talking about. And obviously, if you guys don't know who Ali Miller is, you need to rethink your whole life. So, so one of the things she talks about, and I believe it's a leptin deficiency. It's hard for me to understand because, you know, leptin, we associate that with satiety. So it's weird that you're feeling a lot of satiety, but leptin is down. So I don't quite understand that, but she's talked about it a lot, and you look like the stereotypical example of what she talks about. A lean woman who is very keto adapted, that has been doing it for several years, and doesn't have an appetite. You know, 900 calories seems very low, and I don't want to tell you not to listen to your body because that's super important, but I can't believe I'm doing this again. I'm going to talk about carbs because that's what Ali says. You know, you may need to incorporate some carbs to get a little leptin reset, and that might help you get your appetite back.
Hold on. Before you go, Renita wants to chime in, and Danny took her microphone.
I'm going to contradict you.
Yes! We have dissension in the ranks.
Yes. I feel that all y'all are under eating.
Air one of you.
Every one of you. No, I think a lot of times, yeah, your hunger is not trustworthy because I think it's important to have an idea what is an adequate amount of food to consume. You know, when you're looking at your activity, you should be thinking fuel, not, you know, what is the least amount that I can possibly get away with and still perform. That isn't an optimal way of thinking, you know. So I think you can grow your hunger and grow your metabolism by baby stepping your calories up. You can get there. Yeah.
You want to go first?
Do you do any DEXA scan, bod pod testing, in-body, any of that? And the reason I'm asking is, one of the things I'd be concerned about with that low of a caloric intake, I would almost assure you that you're losing some amount of lean muscle tissue or having some effect on your bones. And for me, I do regular testing because it's about longevity and it's about my overall health. And I think those things are really important. So even if I'm not hungry, it would be important for me to make sure I'm getting enough nutrients to focus on those other issues.
I want to be clear. I'm not advocating for a 900 calorie, no, I'm saying if that's what you're eating for a day or two because you're not feeling hungry, and the next day you're slogging through 7,000 calories because you're famished, do that. I'm not saying like never eat more than that again. I'm saying if you're not hungry, don't eat.
Yeah.
But if you are hungry, you better eat.
Well,
and you better eat beef.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do eat organ meat, and I love it. But it's just something that I realize now that I always trusted my hunger. And then after that, when I realized my hunger like set to that 900, and I ate more afterwards, and I gained back like what I thought was a slightly healthier amount of fat on my body. But I realized after then that there's plenty of days where I'm coming in easily under 1,500 calories, which I know I'm doing HIIT workouts and I'm lifting heavy, that I'm like, I don't think I'm putting enough fuel into my body.
Then eat more. No, seriously, eat more and see how you feel.
And that's what is hunger always going to be, the best thermometer.
I think
especially.
It is, but Renita does not. Renita thinks your hunger's lying to you. But that's the point, is you got to find out for yourself, right? And it's by how you feel. Thank you. Next question. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Thomas?
I was just going to say one more thing that you do need to keep track of is that the amount of artificial sweeteners, not necessarily artificial, but anything that's sweet that has an excitotoxin effect on your brain is going to whack out your dopamine response. And I think we're neglecting the mental piece here. Like if you have a dopamine, if you're getting someone that's hungry all the time, a lot of times is they're needing that dopamine hit, right? I suffer from food cravings a lot, and so that's kind of like on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I kind of fine-tuned it down to, at that point, okay, I was consuming too many sweet things, whether it be stevia, erythritol, whatever, and it was causing me to have those cravings. But what can happen with that is you can sort of burn out that system a little bit. So I don't know what your eating past was like, but that's a whole just other side of the world that you have to look at that I think supersedes everything leptin and ghrelin related, because that's all kind of secondary, because it all does start up here. So you might just want to look at, okay, are there hyper sweet things that you're consuming that's having an excitotoxin effect on your brain?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And I know that we have a lot of questions that we need to get through, and we all like to just chime in. So we're going to try to make it more concise with our answers. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
That was a fantastic question. I actually do keto coaching, and that's one of the biggest things I see is y'all ain't eating enough. So anyway, moving on with my question is regarding sprints. I've done a lot of research on the topic, and obviously, hands down, it always beats out over the slow, steady cardio, especially when you're looking at body composition. What I cannot find is comparing protocols. Wingate, higher testosterone from a larger rest period versus Tabata, where you're getting a bigger human growth hormone hit from the shorter rest. What would make you choose one over another?
Why wouldn't you use a variety of each?
I do, but if you were going to lean into one direction or another for any reason, what would it be?
I wouldn't. I mean, I would use the benefit of all. And of course, you guys may have a different opinion, but if you're talking about sprints, a variety of protocol is what you need anyway, because you're putting your body through hell, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to do the same thing over and over again and risk injury. So if you can vary it up, but still keep the intensity at that high level, why wouldn't you? I mean, you're increasing those positive hormones anyway. You know, it's just some of them go up, some of them go down, but it's an overall positive, unless I'm wrong. And I am not wrong. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Andrew. So I originally been starting doing keto since 2015, and I actually learned about it from my parents. My dad lost 88 pounds from doing keto. My mom lost 55. And I originally did it because I was a college hockey player, and I needed to cut some weight for the upcoming season. And I made it a lifestyle after that because I loved how I felt, I loved how I looked, and I played amazing. I played okay, but at least I thought I played amazing. And my parents did it for a weight loss diet. And that's kind of the difference, a weight loss diet versus a lifestyle. And they've gained some weight back, and they're not as, I could tell they're not as happy as they once were. And, I was a trainer, and, they asked me sort of help. It's all been questions of, recipes and food and patterns and that kind of stuff. It hasn't really been, I know what they're looking for, it's mentality. And, I'm their son. I'm not really, at an experience or age sort of where I give them a lot of insight. But they do ask me for help, and I know they're trying because they've tried to get back into keto, and it's just, I guess for them it's harder to have the same results and to go back into that long draw that they had to lose all that weight to begin with. It's scary for them. They don't want to do it. But have any of you ever had to help a family member sort of dig themselves out of sort of a bad food slump, I guess, for a long time? And if so, how would you go about it?
I mean, it's a good question. Kristin, you want to answer? You want to take a swing at the first one?
Sure. So my sister and her husband recently went keto in the last year, just following my lead, and they've had great success on it, and we are slowly trying to turn the rest of my family. But I tell you what, every time I try to stand on my soapbox and talk about it, it's like people get so defensive. So I think it's really hard. It sounds like they're actually asking you for help, which is awesome. And so I'm a big person of the motto of lead by example and answer their questions as they go, but encourage them to look up their own research. I do think leading by example is the best way we can all teach each other. And so you're obviously doing a really good job by being an example for them.
Can I touch on that real quick? So my family's actually here. They're in the audience.
Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Where are you?
Where are the Shewfelts?
There we are.
There we go.
Yay.
And not one of them is cute. No, never mind. No, but honestly, this is something that's kind of happened in my life a couple times now where, so when I was plant-based, it was literally leading by example. And eventually my family started incorporating a lot more salads, green smoothies, things like that. Now I realize what a mistake that was. No, so now that I've been on the keto for 3 years and carnivore for 2 years, it's the exact same thing. Anytime I've ever tried to intellectualize or argumentatively convince my family to do anything, it does not work at all. But when you live it by example, when they see you getting up at a certain time, eating a certain way, staying consistent with things, I think that's really all that needs to be done. If you can give them advice that would fit their goals, I think that'll go a long way, because sometimes we're like a little bit extreme and we're like, oh yeah, so just eat steak and eggs, that's it. And it's like, wait, what? coming from where? You know, like what were you eating before that? You can't just jump off the deep end like that sometimes. So I think maybe being incremental with it and just supporting them, but not pushing anything on them.
Anyone else? None of you have family you've tried to convert?
This happened with me, and like one of the things I love that you and Chris talked about on your podcast, like the first episode, is that people are not going to listen to you proselytizing to them. They're going to watch what you're doing. They're going to see what you're doing. And if you can share your story in detail, kind of like KetoCon, where people share their stories, that's what turns people over. That's where, if you think about anybody who's dealt with addiction or issues, it's usually never that someone said, hey, you need to stop drinking. It's not that. It's like they listen to a story that someone talks about, I beat my PCOS. Oh, crap, I have PCOS. Maybe I should try keto. So that's definitely the best way.
So I just want to point out that every single person up here has not gotten the following that they have, has not gotten the notoriety that they have, the celebrity that they have, whatever you want to call it, by pushing it on someone. All they've done is provide information, right? Answer questions. That's it. And that's how you do it. However, whatever the format is, no matter what the intimacy of the relationship, whether it's your parents, your spouse, your kids, whatever, it's not about pushing it onto them. It's about being available when they realize. Like, I know I've shared my story before. My son has epilepsy. We got into keto because of it. And he didn't want to do keto, so I did it to show him that he could do it because he didn't think it was possible. He saw it was beneficial. He started it. He improved. My wife liked what she was seeing. She started it. And I didn't tell anyone to do it. It was just you model it, and they'll take advantage of it, or they'll ask questions, and they'll start it, and it's just an organic kind of thing. And that's how it really takes hold. Because if they depend on you to tell them everything all the time, when you leave, like you go away, whatever, now they're off. They no longer have that anchor, right? Yeah. So just let it be organic. Don't worry about it. They're grown people too, right? So they got to make their own choices. So anyone want to add anything else to that? And it's also important that whenever you see them eating a candy bar, to shame them as hard and fast as possible. That really helps.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Next question.
My name is Michael Just. I've been doing low carb, high fat just over 2 years. I've lost 140 pounds, just like the guy before us. Thank you. And I've been doing some one set to failure workout lately. And I go into it fasted, and then I eat whenever I'm hungry, like lunchtime, and I do it in the morning. Am I missing out by not eating breakfast after that, or to gain muscle? Because that's what I'm wanting to do now, is build muscle instead of not focusing on so much on the fat losses, but to gain muscle now. Am I missing out by not eating after workout?
Robert, you want to take that first?
Yeah. So like, I'll use myself as an example. I train fast. I train in the morning. And I train hard and I train heavy. I don't eat anything pre-workout. I don't really eat anything for several hours post-workout. I eat a really big meal the evening before. That fuels the next day's workout. If you're getting enough total fuel in, and you're training hard, your body's going to have ample energy to replenish that glycogen, to build that muscle tissue. And that's the main thing. I'll eat several hours after training, but I'm not rushing to get, like, I used to think, back when I was eating the bro diet approach, that if I didn't get my protein shake 20 minutes in after my workout, I was losing muscle. That's not the case. Life doesn't work that way. So eat enough food, make yourself, get yourself enough. But yeah, don't worry about that, man.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about energy and fuel. Am I missing out on muscle gain by not eating? Is that
No. I've been building muscle, and I'm doing fine without it. So you're good.
Okay.
Anyone else got anything?
Especially you're doing one set to failure, and that's going to be really challenging. But it might work out really well doing even OMAD, like he talked about. The more trained you are, the smaller that window becomes. And I've looked at this. How many times have we talked about this on the podcast?
So many times.
And an untrained person can go 12 hours, 15 hours, without eating anything. But the more trained you are, and they were talking about very highly trained athletes, then it brought that down to 4 to 5 hours post-workout. So you got a lot of leeway, and if you're not hungry post-workout, then that's okay.
Dr. Wilson, Jacob Wilson, just did a whole series on Instagram about this, right? It's Muscle PhD. It's his handle. Check it out. Okay. He talked about that window closing as you get more and more trained. But if you're in the untrained state or beginner state, it's much more flexible for you, so you don't have to be as rigid on that. Anybody else got anything to add?
I guess I'd just add, this has been the hardest thing for me to change going keto, because I have for so many years had a protein shake right after my hard workout. And so I was very terrified that I wouldn't have the muscle gains if I didn't do it. So I actually just recently started experimenting with doing some essential amino acids in either a tablet form or doing just 5 milligrams or 5 grams of leucine right after my workout instead of having any calories or any protein shake. So that's something else you might want to consider.
Thank you. Oh, Will?
I think Robert nailed it. I think, honestly, if you're doing pre-workout fasting, if you're doing post-workout fasting, you're going to be fine as long as kind of 2 factors are accounted for. One is that you're progressing with your workouts. So are you getting stronger? Are you staying consistent with it? The second is, are you consuming sufficient protein and calories in general? And one thing I found works for me is I can really undereat if I'm eating a smaller diversity of food. So if I'm just doing steak, I might clock in at like 1,500 calories, and I'm like, I'm sick of this for the day. So I find for me, actually including diversity in my foods, meat and eggs and seafood and maybe a bit of dairy and things like that will actually ramp up my caloric intake, allowing me to continue progressing in the gym, salting everything really well, making it hyper palatable. Primal Kitchen steak sauce has been amazing. So that really helps me just down a little bit of extra food. So finding those kind of tips and tricks to make sure that you are consuming enough food. But yeah, those are the 2 main things. Are you getting stronger? Are you eating enough? And that's really what you should be focused on. I think sometimes, the meal timing and it was 45 minutes, should I have had breakfast? Those kind of things, you can get lost in the weeds a little bit with that.
Got anything? No? Renita's just shy. She has comments, but she's just going to keep them to herself. Thomas, got anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it. I know we've already had a question about CrossFit once already today, but mine actually is more along the competitive side of it.
Can you start over?
My question's more about the competitive side of it. I've already done 3 competitions using targeted keto, but they're 1-day competitions. And if we're looking at competitions over 3 days, how would you go about incorporating, using a ketogenic diet, but still being fueled during those competitions? We're talking about 3 or 4 highly intense competitions each day for 3 days in a row.
So I would leverage, like I'm a bodybuilder, so I'm not like lifting weight when I compete. It's just me looking good, I guess. But I lift weight a lot when I'm training for that event. But I've had clients that are powerlifters, CrossFitters, and I'll implement the same technique, having that fat refeed. So basically, just to give you some numbers, the night before each event, you have to play around a little bit. Everybody's gonna be a little bit different. But I found like starting out with your baseline calories, add about 30% to that. Give yourself another 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Make that 30% come from both protein and fat, and that's worked wonders for me and my clients.
Repeat that one more time, just so people are writing it down. Say it one more time.
So take your baseline caloric intake, roughly, increase that by about 30%, both of which coming from protein and fat. Give yourself a bump in sodium by about 1,000 milligrams, and then do that each day prior to the event. So if you're doing 3 days straight, each evening, have that increase, like that keto caloric refeed is what I call them.
Would you mess with that, like outside of those competitions, like once a month or once every couple months?
Yeah, so like if you're training and you've got a pretty good replica of what you would be expecting on a competition, you can kind of experiment and see, because it might be 35% increase, might be 40%. I mean, everybody's gonna be a little bit different, but just play around with it. Find like a replicated event, and then do that the night before and see how you perform. And then if you need to increase the sodium, tweak something a little bit, you've got time out. I mean, you don't want to wait to the final hour to be experimenting. So I would intentionally try and do it as an experiment prior to the actual event.
Danny?
Most CrossFit events on competition day are going to be extremely glycolytic. So, it's going to be an AMRAP. It's going to be something for time. So you are going to be redlining it. And when you're training, you don't have to do anything, honestly. When you're training, probably even better to try to do as little carbohydrate and complicate things. But on race day or on competition day, especially if there's 3 days, if you're taking in a little bit of carbohydrate before, like I said, as a supplement, you're gonna burn through that, and by the end of the day, when you test yourself, your body is gonna tell you that you're in ketosis. I can almost guarantee it. And if you're doing it multiple days, you'll be great. But of course, when you're not training on those days, later on at night, eat a nice, big, fat, healthy meal. You don't have to load up your carbohydrate stores like everybody used to do, like eating 400 grams of carbohydrate. We're talking about 10 to 15 grams, maybe even 10 grams before each WOD. So if you got 4 WODs that are always going to be very intense, 10 to 20 minutes or so, that's 40 carbs for the day that your body burned through during the WOD. So, yeah.
Anyone else got anything else?
Great, thank you.
Next question.
Hi, my question's about protein, insulin resistance, and weight loss. I was wondering if you've noticed any differences between going from that 0.82 to 1 gram of lean body mass for protein. Do you think if you're insulin resistant, you might be better at that 0.82 versus that 1 or even above? I know it's a really hot topic and everyone's kind of all over the place now, so any clarity or anything on that?
Who wants to take the first swing?
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying that insulin resistance in general gets a bad rap because it's only talked about generally mainstream with the diabetic community and everything. So, and I think I know the particular topic you're talking about because I've been kind of seeing the buzz on that. Yeah. And I've had a hard time determining if they're talking about peripheral insulin resistance or what. Because peripheral insulin resistance isn't necessarily a bad thing. And to give a simple example of that, and I talked about this in my talk, but when your cells are so accustomed to utilizing ketones, they will turn a blind eye to glucose. And what will happen is, by default, that glucose will either shuttle to the brain or get stored as glycogen. And just because the cell becomes peripherally insulin resistant, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, and the studies have shown that when you come off of keto, that the insulin resistance remains for only about a week, and then you become insulin sensitive again. So protein and its effect on insulin resistance it's a pretty negligible thing, because if someone is in a ketogenic state and they're consuming either 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, or they're going all the way up to 2 or even more, if you're insulin resistant at that level, it's really not going to matter, because the excess glucose is more than likely still going to either get shuttled to the brain, or as soon as you do start working out and insulin sensitivity comes back, it's going to replenish glycogen. So I guess what I'm ultimately trying to say is I would not concern yourself, especially at that small of a difference between the protein. It's just the studies are showing that you can get by with a lot more protein than what was thought 2 years ago. Right. The keto police used to just be like, no, stop the protein here. And now it's like, nah, actually, you're pretty good. Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else got anything? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hello. Hi. Okay, so I've been keto 2.5 years now. I started lifting about last year. I'm nervous. Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
My question, I guess, is originally I lost like 25 pounds, but when I started lifting, the scale started going back up, and I'm actually, can you hear me? Sorry. I weigh, oh my God. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good. You got this.
Okay. So I weigh more now than when I started keto 2.5 years ago. And people keep telling me that muscle weighs more than fat, and I don't know a valid argument,
So first of all, let me stop you right there. Muscle does not weigh more than fat.
Yes, I know, and I tell them that, but they argue with me, so.
Is denser than fat.
Yeah.
A pound of muscle is the same as a pound of fat.
I know, and I tell them that, but they argue with me.
So you're asking like, because you weigh more than you did when you started keto, what's the justification for someone that's saying that keto's not good because it's making you fat? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I hate scales, and I can't tell you the last time I was on one. The way that I measure my progress is through a BOD-POD, comprehensive body composition analysis, or a DEXA scan, or something that gives me insight into what's really happening in my body. And I'll give an example, which I'll also share during my talk tomorrow, but when I got ready for my first competition, I weigh always about 130, 133, 131, whatever. I've tested in the BOD-POD regularly for over 10 years. When I got ready for my first competition, I stepped into the bod pod and I was the highest body fat I'd ever been. And it was at 20.1% body fat. I'd never seen a 2 as my first number, and I thought, oh, God, well, that was what happened over Christmas. I guess I had too many Christmas cookies. I mean, I was so floored, and I thought I have to get serious. I went on a macro and a cutting diet. I upped my fat, I upped my protein. I really focused on protein. I went low carb, I carb cycled. But the point is, I came down, and before my show, I had lost 5% body fat in a matter of only a couple of months, and I gained 7 pounds of muscle. My weight went from 131.756 to 131.4 something. Okay, so I felt amazing losing 5% body fat, but if I hadn't done that testing and I had just stepped on a scale, I would have been so frustrated that I cut out sugar and dairy and processed food and alcohol. I mean, I had nothing for that period of time, and I obviously had really good success, but I only knew it because of the way I chose to track, which was not with a scale. So I'm sure you're doing awesome. Good for you with lifting. I think lifting makes us all age in reverse.
Renita, your turn.
I was just going to point out that my first competition to my second competition, my stage weight was 10 pounds heavier on my second. So I worked my butt off to put that weight on. So it's not always a negative thing. It isn't.
You worked your butt on.
I tried to put a butt on.
Right.
Yeah. So find a way that you can measure. Like, I get really discouraged on the body composition testing, so I just avoid it because I'm never happy with my body fat level, or I'm never happy with the amount of muscle I put on. So for me, it's keeping it positive. So if it's a picture, if it's measurements, whatever you got to do, figure out a way.
Do you have access to a bod pod or a DEXA scan?
There's an in-body somewhere.
Start utilizing that. Yeah, I mean, that gives you insight for yourself, regardless of the argument, right? Knowing more about yourself and knowing what you did to get there can allow you to change to get to where you want to be, right? A number on a scale just means how much earth is dragging you down. That's all it means, right? It's pointless. So use more detail, get some more information. Also, you're awesome.
Thank you.
You are awesome. Yes, you're awesome. All right, next question, please.
I would love to be able to find a personal trainer who I don't have to educate on why I should eat keto. Is there a resource for finding a trainer in your area that already practices low carb or ketogenic eating?
I don't know of any,
Someone needs
but
to
I
start
know
one.
of some people who might.
So are you wanting to work with somebody locally, or would you be open to working remotely with somebody?
I would be open to working with someone remotely. I have a full gym in my garage, so I have all
I
of the
think I
equipment
know
available
some
to
people
me.
who could help you then. I'm guessing.
These guys look really
I mean-
expensive. No, I'm just kidding.
Honestly, you got to watch out. A lot of local trainers, like, they're just not, they mean well, but they're just not educated about keto. They think keto is just simply dropping the carbs. They have no idea what the protein and fat should be. They just don't get
They
the
think I'm
science.
just eating bacon.
Yeah,
right?
It's just unfortunate ignorance is what it is. But you don't want to rely on them for keto advice. So if you're open to working remotely, I would find somebody in the space that has gone through what you've gone through and are going through and has done what you're wanting to do. That way you can relate with them. But yeah, if you're open to working remotely, there's tons of resources out there.
Anybody else? Yep, Danny?
I'll say that, of course, when you work remotely, you're not going to get the same one-on-one attention. And I understand that it could be expensive, but I don't think it compares to a local trainer. I mean, any local trainer is going to charge you, anywhere from $50 to $150 an hour on average. So, I mean, you work remotely with someone, some people can charge maybe double that for a whole month. So, just something to consider.
You should tell them that you'll teach them how to do the keto diet, and they train you for free.
I love that. Good idea.
Anyone else? Renita? If only there was a coach who was a bodybuilding champion. No? Thank you. Next
Thank
question.
you.
So I'm a little younger everybody else.
Keep talking. Get closer to the mic.
I'm a little younger than everybody else asking questions, so what would you recommend or tell a high school kid trying to stay keto with a really busy lifestyle, like working at a fast food restaurant or having marching band every day or having to do school and worry about homework and still wanting to get fitness in and still wanting to eat the right stuff?
What restaurant? What restaurant?
I work at Sonic.
Do they sell hamburgers?
They do sell hamburgers, yes.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah,
You have access to the hamburger patties after they are cooked.
I do.
Grab all of them. Anyone else?
I want to jump in on this because, you know, I'm trying to build these habits with my sons. And I think it's super important to create a daily routine. Every single person here has a daily routine. So you may be looking at this right now like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit all this stuff together? And, you know, you have to get to that point where you have to make that decision and you're going to do it. And if you're asking, you know, how you're going to fit it all in, start the day, especially if it's not something that you want to do. Of course, find something you like to do. But do the hard thing first. Do that first thing in the morning. Do that workout first thing in the morning, and then get your other stuff. Because I can guarantee you, after doing whatever you're doing at Sonic, whether it's taking orders or flipping burgers, you're not going to want to lift as much. So maybe or whatever type of exercise. So start the day with that.
Anyone else?
100% agree with that. I wish I had known about goal setting and just weekly planning, having a daily routine in high school. If you do that, you will be so far ahead of the curve, it'll be ridiculous.
No, it is ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. If you can learn now how to maximize your time, look, creating a schedule is like predicting the future.
Yeah.
And if you can predict the future, you can own everyone. I mean, you can just crush it all the time. You know what I'm saying? Learn it now. Develop that discipline now.
Just
and also eat all the burger patties. I really want to get that across. Eat all the burger patties.
Just in terms of an actionable tip, there's a ton of different ways that you can plan your day, that you could do all these things. One thing that I like is something called a self journal. It's from this company, bestself.co. You grab that, it takes you through a quarterly goal. You set your daily habits, your morning routine, you schedule things into your day. And if you can just schedule in, okay, what time is my workout? How much time do I need to get ready for school? What time is my job? You sit down on Sundays and think, okay, what am I eating this week? And how am I going to prepare all of this, like Thomas is talking about? You know, you make a huge dinner, you throw some stuff in Tupperwares, you bring it to school, you be that person who pulls out their Tupperware. Whatever it happens to be, if you can just pre-plan these things, and yes, there will be some finessing and some failure in the beginning, and some days things won't work out, but over time you keep trying, and eventually you'll get into a really, really good routine. But I would highly recommend that journal, the Self Journal from bestself.co. Really valuable.
And practically speaking, like I said, go to Costco or get your parents to go to Costco and get boiled eggs, pre-cooked bacon, use Sunday to cook for, you know, at least a couple of days into the week what you can, you know, pre-plan, and just have it available, you know, have it in containers for you. Grab it and go. Have it available in your bag when you're, you know, transitioning here and there or whatever. Just make it easy and convenient. Macadamia nuts are huge. I love them, probably too much. I mean, just anything that's, you know, pickles even. Just get a Ziploc bag with a pickle in it because you need the electrolytes, that kind of thing. Just whatever you need to do. If it's portable and it's easy to eat, make sure you prep it on Sunday night. Get ready for the school week. Also, what's the big takeaway? What's the big takeaway?
Planning.
Eat all the burger patties. Anything else? Thank you. Next question. Uh-oh.
Hey.
Dr.
Well,
Anna
Brian,
Quebeca.
you said it, daily routines. So could each of you snapshot your daily routines? I would love that.
Discuss our daily routines?
Yeah, just a quick snapshot of daily routine or your daily
All right,
hack.
who wants to go first? Danny, you want to go first?
This is like the most passionate thing for probably all of us.
Yeah.
So first thing I do right when I wake up, I turn on the sauna. I make Mauro's coffee while the sauna's heating up. Super important. Oh, 4:30 now. It used to be 4:30 most days. And I do meditation in the sauna. And then after that, I'll do my daily devotional, my morning reading, and then I take my son through his routine. But And then at night, I have my own night routine, which is just basically looking back on the day, looking at what went well, finding gratitude. I do that every single day. And then I incorporate that into my kids' lives, and we ask the children, how did you fail today? And we were looking for ways that they failed and so that we can learn. And if they didn't fail today, dang it, maybe tomorrow you'll fail, So, seeking failure.
A parent can dream, right?
Yeah, that's my routine.
I get up somewhere between 4:45 and 5:15, and the first thing I do when I wake up is I work out. So that either means going to the gym and lifting heavy, or it means one of my girlfriends coming over to my house so we can go on a run. I live right by a chain of lakes, so we just run from my house. Or it means going to a workout class. But I just find that if I start my day with a workout, fasted, I have more energy, I'm more productive, I'm in a better mood. It just sets my day off in the right tone. Then when I'm done working out, the first thing I do is meditate, because I spend a lot of time in my sympathetic nervous system. I'm in fight or flight more often than I care to admit. And so meditation helps me get in that parasympathetic system. And so I like to do it right after I work out as opposed to before, because then it really calms me down. And then I have coffee and get ready and work.
So my routine's all screwed up this week, but generally speaking, I wake up between 3 and 4, and I try and reserve the first several hours of the morning before anybody else is awake to do big picture thinking stuff with the business, my life, my relationships, just everything in general. So that's why I've got a compound. We're living in this warehouse, and every single wall has a whiteboard. Like, no joke, I've got 20 whiteboards. And I'll go out there and I'll draw like all this big picture visions, and that's, to me, is like my time to just get my thoughts together. Then the day comes and you have to answer emails, you have to do all this stuff. It's like busy work that I love doing, but you don't want to make that, you don't want your big picture creative thinking time to be filled with emails. So I do that, and then at some point in the day, I like going for a run. I train in the mornings, but at some point in the afternoon, I go for a run, and I'll use that time to like listen to an audiobook, listen to a podcast, and just have that as a disconnect time to learn on something that I'm interested in and just disconnect from the day-to-day.
I'm noticing a common theme that everyone likes to get up early here. So I get up at 11 a.m. No. Shoot a couple videos.
Go back to bed.
Go to bed. About it. So I get up usually around 5 o'clock, and I've had a recent revelation that I used to meditate in the morning, and then I started reading all this stuff, and I started realizing that when I was meditating, I was almost, in a way, falling asleep meditating. Like I wasn't and I realized I wasn't getting the benefit out of it. So to your point, I actually like to meditate when I'm the most amped, because I feel like I'm conditioning myself. So it's kind of interesting, something that I've developed recently. So I used to get out of bed and meditate, and I was like, I'm kind of cheating myself. So now I get out of bed and I have this thing that I've coined before. And I said, let yourself be dumb. And what I mean by that is you get up and you don't think about anything. You just go. I have my tea and I go to the gym and I get whatever my workout is. That part is planned, but I resign to the fact that I'm not going to wake up and stress myself out about my plan, because then that starts my day off wrong. So I have my plan is laid out and my day is laid out the night before. And that's the big thing, is I look what's happening the day of. It should just be, for me, it's just business as usual. I'm sort of on autopilot in a way because it's already set the night before. So that way, there's always surprises, but there's no surprises, right? So that way I can get up in the morning, I'm just dumb, I go work out. But even now, I've changed it even still, because I used to find that I wanted to get up in the morning and just get in the gym and get back, spend a little bit of time with my family, get to my office. And then I started realizing that I was chasing something that didn't need to be there. Why do I always feel this need to be up at 4:30 in the morning? And someone very important to me said something to me, and they said, Thomas, why are you so driven? You need to be driving yourself. And I'm like, holy crap, game changer. Because I've always been, Thomas is so driven. He's such a driven guy. And it's like you said this morning, it's about grinding. Grinding by nature, that's bad. You don't want to be grinding. That means you're breaking crap. So for me, it was more about, okay, how do I drive myself to where? So I realized, and I got my priorities in order, and that's such a cliche thing to say, but I want to be there when my baby wakes up in the morning. And that's now a really important thing to me, because that is precious time that I'm never getting back. For him to be able to see daddy first thing in the morning. So you know what? I don't want to say my workouts took a back seat because they didn't, but that is no longer the very first thing that's on my mind that I do. The first thing that just default on my mind is I want some family time. And guess what, guys? My workouts have exponentially improved because I feel emotionally fulfilled before then. So it's freaking awesome. And I encourage all of you to just think about why you do fitness for a second. I know I'm digressing because a lot of times we're chasing something that's not necessarily what we really are. You have to enjoy it, and the plan has to be something that you enjoy. Otherwise, what the heck's the point? And then the rest of the day, I just shoot videos and crap like that and then put them.
Will?
I think it's so interesting that we're seeing a lot of correlation here. Everybody seems to be getting up early. They've got goals set for the day. I think everybody's working out first thing. Well, Robert works out a little bit later, but so does Danny. Okay, well, there goes that thought. So my current daily routine, something I'm always experimenting with, but something that has really just helped me drive home discipline for myself currently is I'm up at 3, make a cup of coffee, I'll do morning gratitude. I will be at the gym at 3:30. I'll train until 5 in the morning. And then after that, head home, shower, get dressed, get my stuff ready for the day. Exactly like Thomas was saying, I plan everything the night before. I do not want to think about that in the morning. I don't want any decision fatigue. I don't want to figure out what am I supposed to do today. Like, the morning for me is execution time. There may come a time when I have a family that I want to be there for my kids in the morning, but right now that's not really a consideration of mine. So it's just executing, getting the difficult things done, the things that might fall off otherwise if I try to do them later in the day. 6 a.m., I'm usually at a cafe somewhere. I've got my laptop. I've got a book in front of me. I will read 10 pages. After the 10 pages are done, I launch straight into whatever my top priorities are for the day. And I try not to get bogged down in busy work, which is emails. Honestly, for me, posting can sometimes, and engaging with a bunch of comments, that can be busy work for me sometimes, because social media can really start to eat your time up. So I will try to do more proactive work in the morning, and then I can do more reactive stuff later in the day. I do not currently meditate. I really want to, now that I've heard all of you talk about this. So that's pretty much what my day's looking like. I'm in bed at about 9 p.m. I get 6 hours of sleep. At some point during the day, I usually take like a 30-minute nap. That's a typical day for me, and just what's working for me right now.
Renita?
I'm an underachiever after listening to all that. My husband gets up at 6 and makes coffee for me while I'm still sleeping, but yeah, I like my sleep, and I work out in the afternoon, so I fast through the morning, and then I eat my lunch, and I work out after that, and then eat my supper. So, yeah, I obviously need to work on the meditation part of it, but.
So I'm up anywhere between 1 a.m. and 4:45. It really depends. And if I'm up at 1, my day starts with me. Well, regardless, I spend 15 minutes of just sitting there. And I'm not necessarily meditating. I'm just being in silence. And what I'm trying to do is direct my thoughts. And maybe it's meditation, but it's not specifically trying to like focus in on a thing. I'm just trying to be silent. I'm really just trying to be freaking quiet. And it's amazing what it'll do for your brain just to start the day. Like when you get up, and the first thing you do is looking at your phone, you turn the television on, like it's just all of a sudden you've got this bombardment, but just slowing it down. I drink decaf coffee, not every day, but when I do, it's decaf. I'm at the gym by 5-ish. I do an hour and a half on the weights. Unless I really don't want to do any cardio, then I'll do an hour and 45 minutes on the weights. And then I row for whatever time I've got left. I'm out of the gym by around 7. I listen to various things. Sometimes it's scripture, sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's audiobooks. I rarely listen to music anymore. Is that sad? Like I'm always
the same exact way now.
Yeah. So, and I'm just when I start work, it's about just getting things done and moving, and just trying to be too fast for anything to take over. And then I'm in bed by 10 o'clock usually, hopefully, at night. It depends on whether or not jiu-jitsu goes long or what kind of a session it was. I do jiu-jitsu in the evenings. That's it. So, okay, so I'd like everyone to give a round of applause for our panel, please. You guys are awesome. I love you guys. Really do. So Thomas DeLauer is going to be over in Redmond, not Washington, the actual Redmond booth here. Right, going to Washington. And as soon as he leaves here, so if you guys want to meet and greet him. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.